In this video, we're going to be talking about web applications versus mobile applications versus native applications, specifically when using Bubble.io, so the Bubble no-code app development platform. We're going to break down what each of these is, and make sure you stick around until the end because we're also going to be talking about which type of app you should be building, and if you need to transition over, when you should do that, how you should do that. We're going to go into all of that in this video. First, if you're new around here, my name is Kristen and I'm the co-founder of Coaching No Code Apps, where we help business owners and industry experts build custom apps to either start their app-based businesses or grow their existing businesses, all without coding and no technical background required. So we're going to break all of this down today. First, let's talk about what a web app is versus a mobile application versus a native app. So a web app is essentially an application that you access and use from a web browser. It's pretty simple. So think of different SaaS tools you might use. Think of your email marketing provider or the one you plan to use in the future, maybe MailChimp or ActiveCampaign, something that you log into from your web browser and use from your web browser. That's a web application. Now, a mobile application is essentially just when you use a web application on a mobile device. It's something that works on a mobile device, whether that's your phone or a tablet. Now, a lot of people get this confused. They think a mobile application is the thing you're downloading from the App Store. Now, this is a small technicality, but really you can have a mobile application that is not a native app that you would download from the App Store. And this is important to understand because if you need users to be able to access and use your app from a mobile device, you don't necessarily need to go the next step of having them be able to download it from an app store, for example. So with Bubble specifically, you can design your app so that it works on any screen size. You can create a responsive app. Now, we won't go into how to design a responsive app in this video because there's a lot that goes into that. But essentially, you can create your app to work on a desktop screen size, for example, and you can make it so that it works all the way down to a phone screen size. It works on your laptop and it works on your phone and it works on your tablet and everything in between. Now, when we're looking at native apps, this is a little bit different. So a native app is the app you are going into the Play Store and downloading, for example. Now, a native app is something that works more natively with your device. So with your phone, for example. A web application and a mobile application, which a mobile application, again, it's really a web application that you're just accessing from a mobile device. Those are different than a native app. Now, when it comes to using Bubble, one of the big questions is, can I put my Bubble app into app stores? And the answer is yes, you can. Now, what you have to do is essentially create another type of app, which is a hybrid app. So with Bubble, you're building a web application. When you build a web application, that can work on mobile devices in terms of the screen size, but it's not something that you can put directly into an app store. In that scenario, what you have to do is wrap your desktop application or your web application and create what's called a hybrid app. Now, when you do this, you still have a web application, but you are just, from a very high level, essentially transforming it in a way that allows you to put it into app stores. At its core, it's still a web application. So you're still going to want to have an internet access when you are accessing the app, but you can give this app native-like features. So you can have it work more natively with a user's device. So we have our web applications, we have our mobile applications, and then we have our native applications. And when you kind of create a crossover, you have a hybrid application. And that's what you can create using Bubble. Now, this suits most needs, but we're going to go deeper into this so that you can know when and how to do this and all of the other details. Now, if you are creating a hybrid app, if you need to put your Bubble app into app stores, you're going to do so by using what's called a wrapping service. And again, this is where you wrap your app so that it is able to be put into an app store. Now, which wrapping service should you use? This is another question we get a lot. And this is another one where it really depends. It depends on your own needs, your own use cases. Now, a wrapping service is kind of like any other platform. Think about any type of no-code app development platform you could use. They all offer something a little bit different. They all enable you to do some different things. Well, wrapping services are similar. And so the one you use is really going to depend on your needs. Some of them are complete DIY, so complete do-it-yourself, where you go in and you create the setup and it's all on you. So it's essentially kind of like a portal where it allows you to transform your own app. And again, I'm talking from a high level here, but it allows you to do it. Or you can use one that's more of a service as well. So maybe you are using the platform or the wrapping service to wrap your app and you're actually paying someone else to do it for you. Right? So there's a lot of variation. Another thing to understand is that each wrapping service will offer its own native-like features. So we're talking about having your application work more natively with a user's device. Different wrapping services will allow you to have different native-like features, or rather they support different native-like features. And again, this goes back to kind of looking at any type of no-code app development platform or any platform at all, really, where each one is going to offer something a little bit different. So you have to find the one that suits your own needs. And this is what you have to do when you're choosing a wrapping service as well. Now, there are lots of them out there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to post some links, or I'm going to include some links in the description box down below so you can explore some of these to get started with so that you can see which ones might suit your needs best. Okay, so now we've covered the difference between a web app, a mobile app, and a native app. And we've also talked about a hybrid app and creating that specifically on Bubble using a wrapping service. All right, so the next thing I want to talk about is when you should wrap your app. This is another question we get a lot. When should you actually go through the process of wrapping your Bubble app and creating this hybrid app so that you can put it into app stores? And this is a good question, and it's one that I really want you to think about and consider. Now, we advise our clients to wrap their apps post MVP. Right? And this is really important because if you wrap your app right from the very start, you can end up giving yourself a lot more work in the long run. And here's the reason. When you're building and launching and growing your app, you go through a number of different stages, both in development and in testing and even onwards as you're scaling. Now, as you go through these stages, you're going to be getting different types of feedback. Feedback on functionality, feedback on usability, feedback on adoption, feedback on the product, the features, all of the different components of your app. There are specific stages you need to go through. Now, if you wrap your app from the very start and you haven't gone through these feedback stages yet, you're just going to be giving yourself more work because inevitably, you will need to change your app. You will need to. Now, that's not to say that you can't change your app after you've wrapped it, but understand that it's so much easier to do your beta testing, for example, with a web application versus wrapping the app right from the start before you've even brought any beta users on board and then having to go back and change the app. There's just really generally No reason to do that. It's just added time, added work, when you're likely just going to be going back and kind of reverting to those earlier steps anyways. And so the process that we like to teach and guide people through is create the first version of your app that you can now use for testing. And this is the app that you will launch and then continue scaling on the other side. But create this app, start testing it with those initial beta users. And then once you've gotten those first rounds of feedback and you can iterate the app, you can change the features, you can remove features, you can add features, which you are going to be doing. It's inevitable. And then wrap the app once you do your next launch. And this kind of goes along with the soft launch mentality, which is another thing we like to teach. Instead of having one big, kind of like a grand opening of a launch, you can do soft launches where you launch to some initial test users when you're finalizing the functionality. Then you launch to some initial beta users, and then you launch even bigger in larger waves of beta users. And then you kind of push yourself into this ultimate rollout phase where you're now scaling the app. Now, you don't have to wrap your app from the very start before you go into those testing phases. And to do so, it's just giving yourself more work. In 99% of cases, you just don't need to. So I would advise you to think about this and think through this. Do you need to focus on wrapping your app right now? This is assuming that you don't currently have users on board, you're not past those testing phases. Do you need to wrap your app right now? Or would waiting actually allow you to move faster, start bringing some initial users on sooner, start getting feedback more immediately, and then allow you to turn around and wrap the app now that you have gotten that feedback? Now, the next question is, should you even wrap your app at all? Do you really need to have your app in app stores? And this can seem like kind of a weird question, but it's one I want you to ask yourself, because a lot of people come into the app development world and they just automatically think they need to have their app in app stores. But a lot of the times you don't. Now, this really depends on your own use cases. So again, there's no blanket statement answer here. But ask yourself, how will users generally be accessing your application? How do they need to access it? For a lot of B2B apps, so business to business, you often don't need to ever think about creating a hybrid app or putting your app into app stores. It just doesn't really make sense because the app is always going to be used from a desktop, and there's just no reason to add in that extra step because users don't need it. And even for B2C apps, this is often the case. Now, with B2C apps, so business to consumer apps, you're more likely going to potentially wrap the app at some point. That's not to say you need to. You certainly don't need to. But you just need to ask yourself, how will your users be accessing the app? And this really goes back to what the app is for. What is it used for? Does it need features and different functionalities that are native-like? Does it need to work more natively with a phone, for example? If so, well, then you might need to go that route. If not, then you might not need to go that route. And really, even if you do need to put your app into app stores, you might not need to do it for a while. This actually might be something that will depend on the feedback you get. If you don't inherently know whether or not you need to put your app into app stores, for some people, it's not a question. You already know, and that's fine. But for some of you, you might not be sure. And really, you can let feedback dictate this. Once you bring users on, starting with a web application, once you bring users on board, how are they accessing the app, or how are they wanting to access the app? When are they trying to access the app? Are they asking for a native app or for a hybrid app? If they don't need it, then there's really no reason to go that extra step and actually have your app in app stores. So I would encourage you to also use feedback to help dictate this if you don't already know 100% whether or not you're going to go this route. Ultimately, if you can start with a web application and even create a responsive web application. So you can be creating a web application that works on desktop, tablet, mobile, any screen size. If you could start with that, that will allow you to move more quickly into your actual testing stages where you're bringing users on board. It'll allow you to build up a lot of traction early on without having to worry about this next step yet, especially when you don't really need it yet. So if you can start there and focus on that, especially for your initial version, the initial version of your app, or versions even, that's going to allow you to move a lot faster. And then you can either wrap the app moving forward after you've now gotten initial feedback, iterated the app, and kind of honed in on the product itself, or you can wait and base your decision on the feedback you get from your users. You can see how they're accessing your app or how they're wanting to access your app. And that can allow you to make the decision and make a smarter decision later on. At the end of the day, you want to make sure you're doing the right things at the right time and in the right order. And this is what we teach to our clients, and it's what we guide them through as well. And so if putting your app into app stores is on the plan, make sure that it's in the right place so that you're able to build up that initial traction, move quickly, and actually launch sooner and start growing sooner. And then put in or add in the wrapping or the hybrid app, adding it to app stores when it's necessary. All right, I hope that's helpful in guiding you through whether or not you need to wrap your app, how you can do so using Bubble, and when to do so. If you did find this video helpful, give it a like below and subscribe for more like it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.